The Things We All Carry is a podcast about first responders and their stories surrounding trauma on the job. The intention of this podcast is to raise awareness and share meaningful conversation around a subject often viewed as taboo or simply ignored. Be aware this content may be graphic and it is real. It may not be suitable for children or adults triggered by this subject matter.
Welcome back to The Things We All Carry. Today I sit here the day before releasing this show and I'm kind of reflecting. It's a milestone episode and it's kind of funny that I really don't have a lot to say about it other than, my continued thanks for your support. I keep saying it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for supporting. And thanks for sticking with me. This is episode 100 and I started this show a while ago. It's almost 2 years since I really started recording episodes. It's about 18 months since I released my first 5 episodes, which I did completely by accident one day. And I was learning on the fly and I put these 5 episodes out there and I thought, well, that's pretty good. I'll release those when I get around to it. And then I woke up to a text from a friend and he said, man, those episodes are great, but you got to work on some of the other stuff. And I thought to myself, what episodes? And I sent him a text back and I said, what are you talking about? He goes, oh, your stuff's out there. I found it. And, well, that's how the show started. I was still learning, still trying to figure stuff out. And all of a sudden my first 5 shows are out there and I'm getting feedback. So it was kind of a soft opening in parlance of restaurants or stores. And it grew from there. It took off. I was amazed that these people with these fascinating stories and these incidents, these traumas, these recoveries, the growth. I'm just fascinated and blown away by the fact that they wanted to and they still want to share these things with me. I'm just some dude with a microphone and I get to hear these stories that are heartbreaking at times, but they kind of rebuild my belief in this human race because I listen to it and I listen to how these people persevered and overcame and how they stick to it and they come out of the other side of all of this more determined and more eager for life. And I applaud each and every one of them. I'm not able to keep in touch with everybody because it's so daunting to think of it that way. Every once in a while I reach out, to random guests and past guests and just say, just check in. I did it with Chris Monroe the other day and it was funny. He didn't have my number in his phone. He didn't know who I was at first. And then we went back and forth and it was good to hear that Chris is doing well and life is treating him well. And he's still active in the fire department and he's still seeing some shit and he's learned better ways to overcome it. And, if you haven't listened to Chris's episode, go back all the way to episode 1 and listen to Chris Monroe. I guarantee you're going to listen to it. And you're going to pardon the technical aspect of it because like I said, I was learning. I had no idea what I was doing, but you're going to listen to his episode and your jaw will drop. And you'll think to yourself, the same exact thing I thought to myself. How did he get back up? Each time, how did he get back up? But the human fortitude and that desire to push forward and to stay on the face of this earth it's amazing. These people, these stories, these transformations, these recoveries, they're amazing. I keep saying that word, amazing. But that's what it is. It's nothing short of amazing. And I'm so grateful that people take a couple of hours out of their lives to sit down and get to know me for a minute and open up and share some of these darkest secrets and experiences with me. And then talk about where they are now and how they are treating life and how they're celebrating life and how they're just taking it all in and they're grabbing it and running with it. And if that's the only thing that people take away from this show is live your life and live it to the fullest, then I've won. This show was won. That's exactly what I want. You turn around, you go through adversity, you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off and you get your ass back out there and you start winning at this game of life instead of letting life beat you down. I'll be honest, I'm still learning that. I have let life beat me down. I've had an active role in some of that, but some of it has also come my way, and it's hit me straight in the chin, and it stunned me, and I am making that turnaround, and I'm trying to move forward. And what did I say? One step at a time, right? It's not going to be perfect. Growth is not linear. Recovery is not linear. But as long as you're moving in that general direction of forward or up, then you're doing the right thing. And God damn it, it's tough, but it's well worth it. Don't sit back and let life come at you. Take the battle to life and get out there and enjoy it. You know, live that without regret. And I know that's, again, it's a cliche saying, but Jesus, you got to get out there and live without some regret. And, I'm not saying hurt people. I'm not saying tear people down. I'm not saying do damage, but live your life, do no harm, take no shit, right? It's something I'm learning. The do no harm part, especially. I have my own amends to make, and I've made many of them. But, from this moment forward, from that moment forward, from a few months ago forward, whatever it is, it's do no harm, take no shit, live your life. And I just wish the entire world could be that way. Live your life and do no harm. I kind of gotten off tangent and on a tangent, excuse me. But like I said before, I've come into these intros and I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about. All I know is that this is a milestone. It's my 100th episode. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about where the show's going. I'm still working on the changes to the show and the format and some of the services that I want to put out there for people to take advantage of. Um, take a listen to today's show. Take a listen to all the past episodes. Join the conversation on Instagram. You can find the show at The Things We All Carry, and there's a broadcast channel that I'm trying to engage people more and more on. And sometimes it's ridiculous. Sometimes it's just me in a cold plunge or on a bicycle or whatever it is. But I put questions and polls out there, and I want to see where people are. I want to connect with people more. I put it out last week for people that wanted to join for a pop-up episode, basically a hangout, I called it. I did it with TJ from Keep the Promise podcast. I had two other people join in, and then we went live on Instagram as well. I want to do some more of that stuff. And the only way I can do that is from your participation and your involvement and your feedback. It's so important to me. And I look forward to it. I look forward to hearing from you guys. I look forward to talking to you guys. I look forward to interacting with you guys. And again, it sounds strange because this is coming from an introvert and it wears me out at times, but I look forward to it. You guys are what keep this show going. And I hope to hear from more of you. So reach out to me on Instagram. Like I said, at The Things We All Carry. Join the broadcast channel. Join the conversation. Be part of this. Let's just figure out life as we go. Let me hear what's going on in your world. You'll hear what's going on in my world. And let's just try and get out there and kick some ass together. So that being said, welcome to episode 100. 100 of The Things We All Carry. Today's episode is with Ben Vernon. He's a fire captain out of San Diego. I'm not going to go into his complete background. He's been on the job for roughly 20 years between career and volunteer. He's lived one of those lives that he started out not sure where he wanted to go, so he gave something a try that led to something else, that led to something else, led to firefighting, and he's done a little bit of everything in this job. Ben is a kind of a renowned public speaker now for what happened to him on the job 8 years ago. He responded to a medical call, and on that call, there was an altercation with a bystander, and this bystander ended up stabbing Ben and a coworker and one of his crew members, and it all happened in the span of like less than 5 seconds. Ben tells his story. He walks us through that attack. He walks us through that call. He walks us through kind of the seconds after the attack when he became not just a first responder, but now he became a patient. And he was also still trying to care for his coworker and how he gets to the hospital, how he recovers physically, but more importantly, what he finds to recover emotionally and get his head straight to get back into the job and stay on the job and get to where he is today. This story is, um, it's, I don't want to say amazing again, because I've overused that word. It's fascinating, that this happened. He admits that, there were some mistakes made, and it kind of snowballed to what happened. But what happened was an attempted murder, and he and his crew member survived that. And he is here today. He goes out, he speaks to organizations, he speaks to conferences. He's traveled the world over, and he's actually due to go to Australia, which was a goal of his. He's due to go to Australia this year, and kind of makes his own self-titled, now he's a public speaker, because he's made it. He's made it to Australia. And you'll hear him talk about that in the episode. Ben is an engaging person. He is a dedicated first responder. He's dedicated to mental health, and he tells this story very well. It's engaging. It's interesting. It's fascinating, and I'm thankful that he recovered from his injuries and he stayed on the job, and that he's sharing his experience with all of us. It's something that we see more and more today: violence in the workplace, violence against first responders. And it's something we need to be very aware of. And we need to, that old adage, keep your head on a swivel when you're on these calls. You never know what's going to happen. Get ready for this episode. It's a good one. And you guys, tell me what you think. Share your thoughts. Give me your feedback. And I'll see you next week on episode 101. But for now, sit back and enjoy episode 100 with Ben Vernon. A quick reminder to please help us build a community which not only recognizes, but supports each other through the struggles and recovery. Reach out through Instagram at The Things We All Carry, or email my story at thethingsweallcarry.com to offer support and share your story. Please remember to leave a review on iTunes and give a shout out to any first responder you know, love, or care about. Y'all enjoy the show. Give you a promotion without, or give you a demotion without you having an demotion. All right. So how do you feel? You ready to go?
Yeah, man, let's do this.
All right. So welcome back to The Things We All Carry. Today, I am honored to have Captain Ben Vernon on the show with me. He is a 17-year career, correct? 17 years as a career firefighter, correct, Ben? And
yes,
20 altogether?
Yes.
And you're running out of San Diego City, which you're my second guest from San Diego City. And the audience probably remembers Kevin Easley coming on and kind of blowing me away with a story. And I have a feeling that they're going to kind of be blown away by this one as well. You have a different angle, and it's one that I think is more of a concern than ever before, I think, in the fire service. And we'll get to that part of the story as we start to tell it. But first, good morning. Welcome to the show, and happy holidays, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning to you, and happy holidays to you. How was your Christmas?
It was good. And you and I were just talking. I want to give the audience a word of warning that you're going to hear some coughs and probably some voice breaks. We're both getting over colds. I just got my voice back, and you can probably still hear it. I sound like I'm down from a 2-pack a day smoker to about a half a pack a day. So at least I'm not cracking like a teenager. That's the way it was right before Christmas. So we're both kind of under the weather, or recovering from being under the weather. So if you guys hear some coughs or some throat clearings, we apologize, but I'll give you that warning up in advance. That way I don't have to hit the mute button too often today. Just like that, on cue.
I hope I don't.
So I have a bag of Valley Ranchers beside me, so
beer.
I can keep my throat from acting up. So we'll start with music. And I told you, I gave you a little warning. I gave you about a 5-minute warning on this one. What was the last song you heard, sir?
So I commute about an hour to work. So I've become a huge Pandora fan. And right now I've been enjoying, Fleetwood Mac radio. So just listening to Pink Floyd and Fleetwood Mac and, just every band from that era has been should put me in a good mood when I get to work,
Yeah. I vacillate between using my hour commute for music or for just peace and quiet. And it comes and goes. So I I either don't listen to anything or I have some music on in the background. So I understand that taking advantage of a commute to kind of center yourself.
That and I've become a huge podcast and audiobook uh fan, and that I've turned that hour commute both to work and back just into my own little zen place, to just lose myself in podcasts and audiobooks, which I just absolutely love. So
You make it for a captive audience. And so that's perfect.
yeah, exactly. And I started listening to a really good podcast, and then I park at the fire station, and instead of going in to give my relief, I'm in the parking lot, listening to some story or a chapter or something. And, a captain comes out, it's knocking on the window like, "Hey man, are you going to relieve me or what?" I'm like, "Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
How long have I been in the parking lot?" So
In a minute, let me do what I have to do.
yeah, exactly.
You get some overtime, relax. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Speaking of overtime, I know you're coming off of 96 straight. So it's been a hell of a run for you.
Yeah. Our department, I know this is nationwide, so I won't complain, but we were short staffed for so long. Um, we call them mandatories where you get forced to work. You guys call them the same thing?
Oh yeah. Mando days.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've gone ups and downs, but the Mandos have just been atrocious over the last 10 years. They're slowing down a little bit to where you get Mandoed once a week and you're like, "Oh, this is great." Versus 2, 3, 4 times in a week was just, it was way too much.
So when you're doing your mandatory days, are you doing 24s at a time or is it breaking up into 12s or what's the deal?
So they made a new rule. They made a new rule that we can't work more than 96 hours in a row.
Oh,
Um,
well, that's nice of them.
because what you're right. Yeah. I laughed a little bit. I'm like, okay, the damage was done 2 days ago, but all right, let's go with 96. But yeah, so we can't get more than 96 in a row forced. But yeah, that's,
Yeah, it makes and you have what, 4 off now or what are you doing?
I'm off today. I go back tomorrow.
So no, not even 4. You get 24 off to go right back to it.
Yeah, we do every other day 4 times, and then we get 6 days off in a row, and then we do every other day 4 times, and we get 4 in a row. So we end up working, it's supposed to be 10 shifts a month with a week's vacation every month, which is just amazing. But this last 6 day, I ended up working every day, not some of them on my own choice, but some were not. So
Yeah, I mean, you have this little side gig or side hustle, whatever you want to call it, that you never expected
Side
to
hustle,
have.
yeah.
You're a public speaker and that's a full-time job in itself, correct?
it is, and what an amazing gift it's turned into, and what a wild ride I've been on over the last 8 years. My attack was 8 years ago that landed me in the hospital and almost killed me. Um, and then about a year later, I was asked to talk about it, and then more and more people started asking, and it got to the point I had to hire a manager to help me keep track of everything and deal with contracts and then, lawyers and just crazy stuff that I never thought of. But now I travel all over the world, and I told myself I will have made it as a speaker when I get to speak in Australia, and I got invited this year.
Awesome.
I will be speaking in Australia in October. So I've officially made it as a public speaker in my own head. So,
Well, that's awesome. Congratulations.
yeah, thanks, man. I'm pretty excited.
So let's get down to the basics about you as a person. Where'd you grow up?
Yes, sir. Santa Clarita by Magic Mountain, north of LA, about an hour north of downtown city. I lived in LA County, went to school there, did pretty well in high school. So I was looking at universities. I shopped around, and UC San Diego really just flipped every switch for me. I was like, that is where I want to go to school. I went down to UC San Diego, and my first year there, the weather, LA is amazing, right? Southern California, but San Diego was just next level. And I knew my freshman year of college, I'm like, I am never leaving San Diego. Like, this has got to be my home. So I went to school, I got my degree, and then I really didn't know what to do with my life. I was kind of lost. Played Division I volleyball at UCSD, and we got a math degree. I was a bachelor's in mathematics. But I didn't want to work in a cubicle. I didn't want to crunch computer code in a basement. I wanted to be outside. I wanted to be active. So been a couple of years. I was in sales. I was, outside sales, business to business. Um, I hated every minute of it. I vomited in the shower every morning because I had quotas and
Mm-hmm.
right, like real world stuff, like a real job with real consequences. And I hated it. It was stressful and I wasn't happy in life. So on the weekends, I would rock climb, skydive, scuba dive, like anything to get the rush, to be outside and, you know, push myself to the limits. So extreme sports was my thing. Well, a buddy of mine who I played volleyball with, guy Johnny, we were working off weekends at a dive shop, right? Because equipment was cheaper and you could get discount on dive gear. So we worked at this dive shop on the weekends and we were advancing through the ranks of scuba diving. And so we were both dive masters, which is basically a professional scuba diver. And I would be in classes. I'd be the safety guy in classes, spent a lot of time in the water. Well, my buddy Johnny comes flying through the door and he and I were both volleyball players. We're both graduated and then we're both miserable at our jobs. And we're both doing this fun stuff together. And he says, "Hey man, I heard about this job where we're dive masters and they have these boat races in Mission Bay where these boats are the ones that skim across the water and they're going 100 miles an hour." He said, "If we're dive masters and these things called EMTs, when the boat flips over and crashes, they will fly you out on a jet ski and you dive in to the water and you save the boat operator." And I go, "Donnie, that is the job for us, right? Like that is what we have to do." I go, "But what's an EMT?" And he goes, "I don't know, but I signed up. I'm in class on Monday." And it was like Friday. And so I called my boss. I quit my job immediately. No 2-week notice. I just quit my job, enrolled in EMT class and started on a Monday and just introduced to this world of rescue and saving lives. And our instructor was a paramedic and he was telling paramedic stories, right? IVs and cracking chests and, needle thoracostomies. And Donnie and I immediately looked at each other. We're like, well, we have to do that, right? Like that has to be our thing. And so right away, as soon as we finished EMT school, we started doing all the prereqs to go to medic school. And then one day I'm sitting outside a hospital. I just dropped a guy off and an ambulance pulled up from a neighboring county, a neighboring city. And this ambulance pulled up and a guy jumps out and he's wearing turnout bunker pants. And I'm like, "Hey, man, what are you? Like, who are you?" He goes, "Well, I'm a paramedic and I'm a firefighter." I go, "Oh my God, like that's a thing, like you do paramedicine and firefighting?" I'm like, "I'm in, like I got to do that." So started, going to medic school, but I'm also taking fire science classes, uh, you know, working on that route. And then in the fire academy, they brought in the hazmat team and these guys pulled up in this hazmat rig and they jump out, and they're in their level A suits. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "Who are you? Like, what is that?" And they go, "We're paramedics, we're firefighters, and we're hazmat. We do level A entries." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I have to do that." So my whole career is just finding the next coolest thing and then going and doing that. So I joined the hazmat team. That got me on our youth art team. We have 28 federal teams in the United States. San Diego has Task Force 8, California Task Force 8. As well as the hazmat guy, I got on that team. And then they said, "Well, you have to go through all the rescue classes." And so I did all the rescue classes and that made me eligible for our technical rescue team. And so 8 years into my career, I'm on 3 special teams and I was able to bid for a spot on our heavy rescue, which is downtown in the heart of San Diego, right by Petco Park. Um, the engine, so there's 2 crews, an engine 4, and then there was rescue 4, which is now called USAR, but both crews, and then you would rotate. So we do like 2 shifts on the pump and then 2 shifts on rescue. But 8 years into my career, I'm on 3 special teams, but I'm now stationed downtown,
Yeah.
big city fire department on the hazmat team, on the rescue team. And I'm telling you, man, my ego was, it would not have fit in this room.
No, of course not.
I was the most badass firefighter the world had ever seen. I was so full of myself. So
So what was family like growing up? But nuclear family, what was it? Mom and dad married, divorced? What did you experience growing up as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, if you're familiar with ACEs scores at all, you know,
Oh
my
yeah.
ACEs score I was a 0.
Okay.
My parents are happily married still. They raised me and my sister, my little sister. My dad is a preacher. He's now the fire chaplain for Mesa, Arizona.
Okay.
Um, and my mom was a high school teacher and art teacher. So, you know, I grew up in a very loving home and life was good. I was the first firefighter in our family. Everybody else is teachers or preachers. So I was the first to break that mold and become a firefighter.
Yeah. So I mean, an ACEs score of 0 is, I'll be honest, it's probably pretty rare in the fire department, to be brutally honest.
Agreed.
I think that
Agreed.
we all
Yeah.
bring in a pretty good score on ACEs when you join the fire department. I think that's one way of seeing if you're qualified to be a firefighter.
Yeah. I've actually, we can talk about this later, but I want to work with Lexipol and I'm in talks with them to
Okay.
send out a massive um, study on what ACEs scores are in the fire service. I think you're right. I think we are higher than the national average,
Mm-hmm.
but I would like to find out for sure what our scores are. I think it'd be interesting study.
Yeah. Along those lines, I've kind of pondered myself about what's the prevalence of not only ADHD or ADD, but also kind of the spectrum with firefighters. Because and with ADHD and ADD, is it something that you bring in with you, or is it something that is exacerbated when you're in the service? Because we all know what this life is like when you're in the fire service, and it does lend itself to kind of increasing some of these behaviors, and then you start to delve into it and you see, oh, okay, well, some of these traumas can, and the reaction to these traumas can mimic some of those ADHD behaviors or even autistic behaviors. And so I guess that it's kind of difficult to can judge like you like 17 years in or 10 years in or 15 years in. You would have to follow a group across the spectrum of their career, no pun intended, to see where they started and where they end up. And so it's just interesting. I've always wondered about the prevalence of those kinds of what we call neurospicy or neurodivergent folks in the fire service or in first responder communities in general.
It's a good question, and I think it should be something that's studied. Um, the flip side of that, I'm a little worried, you know, if we do have higher than average ACEs scores and we bring in those into the job, I'm afraid cities will use that to say, you know, because California's working really hard on making PTSD a work related, right? And so I'm afraid lawyers, if I do study it and I do publish the findings, that they would use that and go, oh, you have PTSD because you brought that in before you even started the job. So I'm a little worried that that gets used against us.
That's an interesting take. I didn't even think about that because I think Virginia's so far away from qualifying PTSD as work related that it's not even something that we're looking at on the radar.
Yeah. So California has passed it. It is job related. Those cancer,
Mm-hmm.
but yet we still have guys who file a claim and the city denies it. It's like, if it's presumptive, how do you deny it? Like, I'm confused. I still don't quite understand the inner workings of that. I'd be interested to know if it's presumptive, how do insurance companies get away with denying a claim?
We've had cancer presumption laws on the books in Virginia for years now, and I'm probably going to misspeak, and someone will yell at me, so I'll get a ton of mail about it. But as far as I know, we've had one successful case where they've said, "Yeah, this was service related, and here you go." Everything else has been fought, and nothing is presumptive.
Yep.
And so it's the same as what you said. If this is a presumptive case, why are we not just presuming it?
Right. It should be so simple as one page.
Right.
Fill it out. You're done.
And we've identified the specific cancers where we say are included in this bill. But even then, you don't get your coverage.
Right. That's frustrating.
It's very frustrating.
Boots on the ground, wondering what's going on behind the curtain. You know?
So, all right, you get through the academy and you get all these I mean, you garner a lot of letters and helmets and uniforms behind your name 8 years into your career, and you end up on the heavy rescue, which speaking to Kevin Easley, I know what that rescue is like. That rescue runs.
It does.
And it does a lot of cool shit, to be honest with you.
It does.
So how does life progress in the fire service from that point on then for you?
Yeah. And I'll be honest, at that point in my career, I'm 8 years in. I have a crew that I love. The engine is the busiest engine in the city, and it's the fourth busiest in the United States, right? So it is.
Yeah,
I mean, you are cooking,
yeah,
running. But every day I come into work, I'm stoked to be there because we're on rescue. We get to do the coolest drills, and then we get to go to the coolest calls.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point in my career, I'm like, I could just set roots here. Like, I don't want to promote. I've made, right? And ironically enough, Donnie, my buddy that got me involved in all this, he's also on the same path as I am. He bid into the same station on the same division. So we're both fire medics. We're college buddies, and we're now at the same firehouse on the same shift. I mean, we're just the happiest people alive, right?
I was going to say, does life get better at that point?
Right. I'm with my best friend from college. We're at the same firehouse, and this is the crew. We have our own little Christmas party. We all go to Padres games together. Our families come by and eat at the firehouse on a regular basis, not just, right. So it's just always fun, and people are envious, right? The crew is a tight group of good people. We all do our jobs. We're all professional. We love each other. Like I'm ready to just retire, right? I'm like, I'm going to do this for the next 20 years, retire out of here. I'm good, right? I've reached the pinnacle of what it is to be a firefighter. I'm done. Like I'm good. And a lot of us, because we're all specialists in other areas, we teach the classes. We teach at the academy.
Mm-hmm.
We're drilling with other agencies around us. And we just have a good reputation. Like, life is good, man. It was, I do miss that. That was good. So all of that changed, on June 24th, 2015. So if you don't mind, I can share my screen.
No, go for it.
Walk you through the call
Yeah. And we'll try to do a play-by-play, a radio announcement for.
There you go. I like it.
How about that?
I like it. Entire screen. Here we go. All right. Whoa, that's cool looking.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
That's cool looking. All right. So let me walk you through this. Are you seeing me so far?
Yeah.
Can you see this?
I can. Yep.
You see it? Okay. So, June 24th. Yeah. All right. So the call, and I'm on engine 4. Donnie is on the rescue that day. So it's my turn to be in the barrel, right? We get crushed. We're averaging 25 to 30 calls a shift on engine 4. Yeah. So this is a Wednesday. It's 4 p.m. and showing you the picture so we can talk to the people who are listening. There's a guy in a white t-shirt. He's sitting on a park bench at the trolley stop downtown. So this is maybe 3 or 4 blocks from from Petco Stadium.
So that's in the heart of everything.
It's in the heart of everything. This is 12th and Market. So this is right in the heart of downtown. This is about 4 blocks from our station because we're right next to Petco Park.
Okay.
So the gentleman in the white t-shirt, he is drunk. He's homeless, and he is, he's too drunk. He's fallen all over himself. The gentleman you see with the badges, they look like cops. They are trolley security dogs.
Ah, okay. So yeah, I was going to ask if they were cops. They're most definitely not cops then.
They're not. And one of the mistakes, I made a lot of mistakes, but one of the mistakes is we called these guys trolley cops. And I think subconsciously I gave them a lot of credit for everything they wear in their belt, right? They've got the utility belt. They've got guns, pepper spray, batons, handcuffs. They got everything they need. What I didn't know until much later, until the trial and I got to meet these guys, but they don't have any training.
Yeah.
So they're essentially mall security guards, right? And I didn't know that. The gentleman you see in the black t-shirt, this is the guy that tries to kill me.
Okay. So he's the one kneeling in front of the gentleman in the white t-shirt.
Correct. And so what happened is the guy in the white shirt, our patient, is falling all over himself. And the guy in the black t-shirt, also homeless, doesn't know the guy. And the trolley guys all see this guy like falling all over himself. Like he's almost fallen onto the tracks a couple times, right? Like he is hammered. And so everybody descends on him at the same time. And the problem with that is that everybody wants to help, but nobody's working together.
Right.
And so the issue is the guy in a white t-shirt is belligerent. He's argumentative and he's not cooperating. And then the security guards aren't working well with the bystander and they're arguing with him, trying to get him out of the way so they can do an assessment.
So they knew he was another of the homeless guys in the area.
Correct.
Had they had
So
experience with him?
No, but I found out later, San Diego PD, and we have a harbor police department because of the water.
Mm-hmm.
They had interactions with the bystander and they knew he was bad news, right? Like this dude was a ticking time bomb, really. So the problem is the call is progressing. They're trying to do assessments. Nobody's working together and the call is escalating. People are getting really pissed off at each other.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's getting pissed off at the drunk guy. Trolley guys are getting pissed off at the bystander. Bystander's getting pissed off that, nobody wants him there. Right. And it's coming to a boiling point where blood is starting to boil and it's almost about to come to a fist fight. And this is all happening before we arrive. So we don't know that. And so we're rolling up to this call and we don't realize that it's a volcano, right?
Yeah. You have no idea.
Right. Now I have this picture because, the city, this is a really wide curb where pedestrians and trolley riders are intermixing.
Mm-hmm.
So the city put up this 3-foot railing to separate the curb so that your trolley riders and your pedestrians, can move smoothly without really running into each other. And I show this picture because the fight starts on the trolley side and it spills over this railing. And I jump over the railing to break up a fight.
Okay.
Well, the fight comes my way. And all of a sudden, the bystander is like ready to come at me. And I realize I'm in a bad spot and I try to back up and I run into that railing and it traps me.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm the only firefighter in history to get trapped outside, which is really embarrassing.
It's an odd achievement, but we'll give it to you.
I'll take it. So entry 4, we're rolling up now. Like you guys, we usually park right in front of our call, all of our gear's there, et cetera, right? But the trolley tracks take up the whole street. So we have to park a block away. Now, the thing about this picture is you see our engine rolling in, my window's down, and from a block away, I can see my patient yelling and I see him standing. And even though I can see he's wobbly on his feet, I did his airway breathing and circulation from my seat in the rig. Right. So complacency is kind of another trap I fell into on this. I'm rolling. This is our 10th call of the day and our 3rd time at this trolley stop on this day.
Yeah.
So I've already been here twice. This is not my 3rd time. I'm complacent. I've run this call so many times that I'm doing my ABCs from the cab. Right. So, one of the security guards walked up and as I'm grabbing my gear, he gives me a turnover and he goes, "Hey, we got a drunk guy," but he does not give us a turnover of, and by the way, we've been dealing with a bystander and this thing's about to come to blows. Like, we're really glad you're here. Like, we don't get any of that.
Yeah, you have no
So-
idea what the additional gentleman is doing. You don't even know he's part of the incident.
Exactly. So we grab our gear and we walk the full block, this massive city block to get to our patient. And we arrive. There are 5 security guards with guns and 4 professional firefighters. There's 9 of us,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we do what everyone does. We make our little bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And my partner jumps in and starts doing an assessment on the drunk guy. I actually got a turnover from the bystander. So the bystander, I affectionately call him Stabby.
Mm.
His full name is Stabby Stabberton, and he's the mayor of Stabberville. So Stabby gives me a turnover, and I mean, we've all done this, right? I placate him. I listen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very polite. I go, hey, okay, great. And he gives me a bunch of information I don't need.
Mhm.
It's not relevant. It's useless information. But I play the game and I listen for about 30 seconds. And I go, hey man, thank you. Like, wow. That was very helpful. I appreciate everything you're telling me. I'll take over from here. And he says, okay. He grabs his backpack and he walks away, and he walks out of the scene. He walked behind me.
Right.
And so I now turn all my attention to my paper.
Of
Right?
course.
It's like, okay, here we go. Like, I'm going to do my assessment, take his vitals, get on the radio, talk to the hospital, like, package this guy up. So when the ambulance shows, this is going to be the easiest transport for them. Right. Well, what I don't see, and in this picture, you can see it. I'm starting my assessment. Well, over my shoulder behind me, Stabby didn't leave the scene. He walked around and was standing behind me, and he kind of re-engaged with the trolley security guards.
Mm-hmm.
And, they were already argumentative and pissed off at each other. Well, he kind of re-engaged that, and they re-engaged. And so now the call that was a volcano is back to a boiling point,
Mm-hmm.
right? I hear that going on behind me, but it's out of sight, out of mind. I got a job to do. I trust my crew behind me. I got 5 security guards. I hear arguing, but I don't let that faze me at all. And then what I also don't see, because it happened behind me, he ended up getting in my captain's face and trying to pick a fight with my captain.
Your
And my
captain is the
captain
one
goes,
in
"Hey,
the
man."
turnout gear.
Yeah, he's in the turnout gear. He's got an iPad,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he's trying to track vitals and
Yeah.
get personal information.
Yep.
And then we can send that to the ambulance.
Yep.
As they arrive, and now they've got everything they need, right? So it's a pretty slick system. So our captain's trying to do that, but Daddy is getting in his face and arguing with him and calling him names. And my captain's finally had enough. And he goes, hey man, I need you to back up. And he puts his hand on the guy's chest
Mm-hmm.
and he pushes him back, and the guy trips over a park bench.
Gotcha.
Well, that is the catalyst,
Mhm.
right? That's the tipping point. But we've only been on scene for 90 seconds. So we have no idea where we're at in this call, right? Like, and so my captain pushes the guy down. The guy jumps up and attacks a security guard. And you got, like, from my captain's point of view, he pushes the guy down. The guy hops up and punches somebody else. Right? Like, my captain's confused. Like,
Of course
what?
he is. Yeah.
Right? He's like, what is going on? When I hear fists flying, right, I hear contact, that finally breaks my concentration. And I turn and I'm now trying to get my bearings, right? I'm trying, okay, well, what is happening? Like, what's going on? And I see this guy beating up a security guard. So I run over to get in the fight. Honestly, my thought was, we're going to grab this guy and put him on the ground and put him in handcuffs. But as I get there, they hockey check him over that railing I was telling you about.
Right.
Right? They push him on the other side of that railing. They kind of dump him on his ass on the other side of the railing. And for me, I go, oh, okay. I mean, it looked like he got the wind knocked out of him. It looks like they've handled the fight, right? Like it's over, but it's not. He rolled on his feet. And of the 9 of us, right, 5 security guards, 4 firefighters, there's 1 security guard on the other side of the railing.
Mm.
So he is all by himself.
Yeah. He's on the island. He's about to get jacked up.
Yes. So in that split second, Daddy rolls onto his feet, and then he kind of locks eyes with that one poor guy who's by himself. And he just starts throttling the guy, right? I mean, he just beating the shit out of him. And I go, oh no, I got to save the security guard. I'm in rescue mode. Right? We're rescuers. We're not fighters. We don't, you know what I mean? We're not, I don't have anything on my tool belt for pain, compliance. I have no pepper spray. I have nothing. But my mindset is I got to rescue the guy. So I jump over the railing and I dive between these 2 guys and I wedge my body between them. And I put my hand on both their chests and I shove them apart as far as I can. And the mistake I made, right? There's a lot of mistakes, complacency, boredom, thinking the security guards have more training than they do. But I've now, by separating this guy, given him a chance to kind of regroup, rearm, and re-engage, right?
And focus on you.
Yes. So what was 9-on-1, right? Then turns into 1-on-1. So now this is video. You see my hands. I'm trying to talk this guy and go, hey, what is going on? If you watch his right hand, as he is moving in my direction, he is reaching for a knife. The security guards are pepper spraying him from about
he's got it on his right
away.
hip or something, correct?
He does.
Yep.
But the security guards are pepper spraying from too far away. And now you can see it's just me and him. And now I'm on the island.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, yeah. Like I know immediately, like, this guy means business. And so I just try to back up. And that is a knife going into my back. So he
hit you right on the flank, right? Left flank?
Right on the flank. Yep. Missed my kidney.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah. But this shot right above my belt, severed a nerve in my back. I have no feeling in my lower back. But honestly, I tell people, you have to lose feeling anywhere in your body. That is the perfect spot because it doesn't affect my life in any way, So he hits me here and then he pulled the knife out and gets me right behind my shoulder, right behind my left arm in my chest. And this one broke a rib and punctured my lung. So this is a kill shot, right? Yeah. So I'll just show you. So then he pulls the knife out and he goes for my head. And here's what I've learned. And it was almost 2 years after this event. I was giving this talk to the California Department of Corrections. And I gave my talk to a bunch of prison guards. Now, when I show the video to firefighters, EMTs, nurses, doctors, right? When you see the knife go into my body, everybody always goes, ooh, like, oh, like it's a pretty cool reaction. But the Department of Corrections guys didn't react. And they I could just tell, like, they looked at it differently. And I noticed, but I didn't say anything. I kept going with my talk. Well, when the talk was over, the corrections officers came up to me and they said, hey man, we're going to show you a video. And I said, okay, what do you got? And they showed me a video of a prison yard. And it was from like a tower looking down in the yard. And there are prisoners who are lifting weights and some are jogging and some are playing handball. But over in the corner near like a pull-up bar, there's 3 or 4 prisoners and they have like sticks in their hand, like pencils. and they're hitting the pull-up bar, the vertical pull-up bar, and they're hitting it 3 times as fast as they can.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what are they doing? And they said, well, they're training to stab us.
Mm-hmm.
And they stab us just above the belt, below our vest, because they wear stab vests.
Mm-hmm.
They stab just above the belt. They stab in our armpit where there is no vest and in the head.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, your guy, that's a prison trained knife fighter. And that guy is stabbing you as if you were wearing a vest. And that's true. He was a felon. This guy was a previous felon who'd spent hard time in prison. And so that just sent chills up my spine. I was like, holy shit. Like,
Yeah.
I went up against a prison trained knife fighter and he stabbed me as if I was wearing a vest. Like, how crazy is that?
Mm.
Now, the reason I got so lucky is, I didn't see the knife. He kept it hidden, and he came up chest to chest with me and then swung and hit me from behind. And I remember as we're fighting, I'm like, man, you fight like a weirdo. Like, this is not, I've never gone toe to toe with somebody and then tried to punch them in the back of the head
Right.
from the front. Do you know what I mean? I was like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? And so I never saw the knife. Well, when he stuck it in my chest, I didn't feel anything, but when he pulled the knife out, all the air in my lung went out sideways.
Yeah.
It knocked the wind out of me and I doubled over.
Mm-hmm.
And when I doubled over, he tried to stick me in the head and he missed. And so it was just pure luck, by the grace of God, that he did not stick me in the side of the head, because I'd be dead, right? That would have been
absent that move of doubling over, you would have a knife in your skull.
In my skull. Exactly. So, that was my fight. Right. And I didn't show you the fight in real speed. The whole thing, less than 3 seconds.
Jeez.
So my partner, Alex, he didn't see the knife either, but he saw the guy punching me. And in the fire service, we have 2 moves. We talk or we tackle.
Mm-hmm.
I tried talking.
Yep.
Alex went for the tackle. So Alex dove on top of the guy, just landed on top of him, laid on top of him. But the guy still had the knife in his hand.
Yeah.
So he stuck Alex and stabbed Alex 3 times,
Jeez.
all in the upper back. Well, he got me and Alex combined less than 3 seconds. So he stabbed 2 guys a total of 5 times in less than 3 seconds.
Mm.
So it was lightning fast.
Yeah. And you're coming from a standpoint where you're not trained to deal with that. So you
right.
I mean, other than being injured, you're just absolutely stunned.
Yes. Yeah. The fight was over before I even knew it had started.
Right.
They had already dogpiled him and got the knife out of his hand by the time I started realizing the damage. So I started feeling warm liquid running down my back, and then suddenly I couldn't take a full breath of air.
Right.
And I was like, so my brain, I'm trying to do the math of like, weird way he punched me, warm liquid, can't breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And then I felt the knife go through my hair as he glanced off the top of my head. And so then I was like, oh shit, that was a knife in his head. Like, oh my God, I've been stabbed. And by then, it's fight's over. There was, everybody already had him, pinned down and put him in handcuffs. And then I'm like, oh my God, like I'm in trouble. Right?
Yeah.
I'm in real trouble.
Now I'm a patient.
Yeah. Yeah. So we called for a Hail Mary. Our code for trouble is cover now.
Okay.
And when you get on the radio and you'll cover now, that is, Mayday. Like we use Mayday on fires. We use cover now on medical aids. So cover now was the call. And it was like 2 firefighters have been stabbed, right? Like send the cavalry, like send everybody. And so that happened, our department descended on us. Cops came out of every corner. I mean, it was amazing, right? The response. San Diego Fire and San Diego P have a great relationship, and I hope never to ruin that. We really take care of each other. And what we call cover now, man, I mean, they came in full force. Um, so that was a bad day. I got rushed to the hospital, and I had a pneumothorax. So I had air and blood in my chest cavity. It was collapsing my lung. They had to do a chest tube, um, to pull all the air and blood out of my cavity to let my lung expand. Um, brother, the most painful thing I've ever experienced in my life. Like, holy shit, that was rough. They had to do while I was awake.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they give you a little bit of local anesthetic, but that tube is rubbing across the surface of your lungs. Like, it was just, whew, it was rough. But
Yeah,
they
at
got
least
all
the
the air and
stab
blood
wound
out.
came quick and unknowingly, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
chest tube, you know it and you feel every bit of it.
And it's coming, and it's coming. And yeah, I had time to dwell on it. But that was rough. But they gave me the chest tube and reinflated my lung. And then, pain meds kicked in, and I was out cold. Woke up in the recovery room. Alex, got rushed to the hospital as well. His wound, not as life threatening, but to me, way more painful because the last stab, he stabbed him kind of in the trap from the back, but then he opened him up. He rooted the knife around to create a big cavity. And so he had to flush it and wash it out and pack the wound every day for weeks until the wound closed from the inside out. So I think Alex got it way worse than I did. But
Yeah, I mean, both,
Boy.
let's be honest, both are miserable. None of us want
Yeah.
either of those things to happen.
Agree.
How long's your recovery?
Well, that's the trick, right? They kept the tube. I was in the hospital for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
They pulled the tube. They said, all right, look, physically, we can't do anything about the severed nerve in your back, but that won't prevent you from going back to work. Go home for about 3 weeks. Let your lung heal. We'll bring you back in about 3 weeks. We'll pull the stitches. We'll do a pulmonary function test. And, physically you're good. Like, you can go back to work. And at the time, I'm laying in the hospital bed. I'm like, I love this plan. Like, this is awesome. Missing 3 weeks of work. Like, hell yeah. Like, I'm in, this is great. Way less time than I thought. Like, all right, good. But I'm taking a bunch of pain meds, and I'm sleeping every night with opiates, Percocet, Oxy, like, and so about 10 days goes by. I'm at home. I'm recovering at home. I'm getting hundreds of emails and texts. Hey man, hope you're good. That I'm glad you're okay. Like, can't wait to see you back at work. And I'm like, yep, looking forward to it. See you in a couple of weeks. Well, after about 10 days, opiates, right? I mean, we know how addictive those are. And in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm a week and a half in. In another 2.5 weeks, I'm supposed to go back to work. I got to get off these opiates. This is not going to fly. So I quit the opiates. I threw them in the trash. I flucked them because I didn't want to get addicted. And my plan is I'll take Tylenol. The pain gets to be too much. Well, what I didn't know is the opiates were suppressing my subconscious. Without those opiates, that first night, I had my first nightmare. And Stack, I'm telling you, man, we need a new name for these. This was the most intense thing I have ever experienced. That first night I dream I'm back at the trolley stop.
Right.
I'm squared off with Stabby. My back is against the railing. My hands are up, right? Like, we are going to fight again. But I can see him as clearly as I can see you. I can smell urine on the street. The trolley goes by behind me, but the wind from the trolley kind of rocks me off balance. Like, it is detailed. I can feel the sun on the back of my neck, right? Well, he comes at me and he stabs me in the back. But this time I captured his hand and I kept it in my back so he couldn't get me in the chest. And I grabbed him with my other hand. I grabbed him by his ear and then I swept his legs and I threw him on the ground and I climbed on top of him and I start cracking his head in the pavement.
Mm.
And I made the decision. I didn't want to kill him, but I wanted to take the fight out of him because I didn't want to stab me again. So I cracked him a couple times on the pavement, like loud cracks, and it worked. He lets go of the knife. It's still in my back. I didn't feel it in my back, but he lets go and he kind of lays out. And I'm like, all right, good. It's my turn now. And I decided the best way I'm going to hurt him is I'm going to bite off his face. And so while I'm holding both ears, I take my teeth into his orbit and I bite as deep and as hard as I can, and the bottom of my teeth catch on the underside of his skull.
Yeah.
And I remember in my dream, I'm like, I'm not strong enough to bite through skull.
Mm-hmm.
So I back up a little bit until I feel just his eyebrow. And I can feel his eyebrow tickling my tongue. And when I know I've got them just meat, I bite through and blood squirts in my mouth. And I can taste the blood. And then I rip off a piece of his face and I spit it out.
Mm.
And he's screaming, but it's not enough. Right? I didn't cause him enough pain. And so I put my thumbs on his eyeballs and I just shove them into his eye sockets. And I gouge out his eyes and his eyeballs rupture in my hands. And I can feel my thumb going through brain matter, right? And he's really screaming. And then I'm screaming back at him. I'm taunting him. But that wakes me up. And I sit straight up in bed and my thumbs are in his eye sockets, right? Like I'm sitting up, like I'm trying to rip off his face. I can taste blood in my mouth. I am soaked in sweat.
Mm-hmm.
My eyes are dilated. My blood pressure's, 150, 180, like just pounded, right? And my heart rate is 150 and I'm screaming. I wake up screaming and I'm going, "Ah," and soaked in sweat. I go dilated. I taste blood in my mouth. Like I've just murdered this guy.
Right.
I can't go back to sleep after that, right? You don't just turn over and lay back down. My bed is a swimming pool from sweat. My poor wife is laying next to me and she's pretending to be asleep. She's like, Jesus. So I go downstairs, I sit in the dark, I drink water. I just try to bring my vitals within normal limits, right? Just try to reset. Well, that's my night. And then I watch the sun come up. I watch TV all day. I wait for the sun to go down. And I remember thinking that first night, this is normal. I should have been expecting this. I should have been ready for this. But, gnarly event, gnarly nightmare, like, duh, that was dumb. Well, the second night I go, okay, take two, and now I'm pretty damn tired, but I'm like, let's take two. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Second night, same nightmare. Gouge his eyes out, rip his face off, wake up screaming, tasting blood in my mouth. Sit in the dark, awake for the rest of the night, drinking water, trying to bring my vitals within normal limits. And then the third night, and the fourth night, and the fifth night, 6, 7, right? Like, and then at some point, and I'm delirious at this point, I lose track, but I can't go to sleep at all because I know that as soon as I close my eyes, I'm going to wake up screaming, fighting this guy in my sleep. And very quickly, right, the physical is healing and I'm supposed to be going to get stitches out and go back to work soon. But now I'm realizing like, oh, dude, I'm in trouble, right? Like this is not like, like, I don't know what to do. And I was kind of lost, to be honest. My department didn't have, in 2015, we had nothing in place for mental health. We had no plan. We didn't have a peer support team. We didn't have anything, right? Like our health and safety was 100% on physical injuries, and cancer. So I'm kind of lost and I'm scared and I don't know what to do. Well, I showed you that video in slow motion. That's because the news went to the courthouse and they said, hey, we'd like access to the videos. And the judge said, yeah, okay. And he released these body cam footage to the media. Well, the media slowed the event down to slow motion because the fight happens too fast. Two guys get stabbed 5 times in less than 3 seconds. When you see the video in real speed, you can't see anything. It's just over so quick. So they slowed down and they played it on the news. Well, the thing I'm telling you, man, when you go through an event like that, I was replaying that fight in slow motion anyway. And then I didn't know the security guards were wearing body cams. And I didn't know the guy was standing right behind me, practically from my point of view.
Yeah.
And so there's my image in my head played on TV. Like, it was so surreal to see that. I was like, holy shit, that is amazing. Like, whoa. Of course, my wife sees the knife go through my hair and she just starts bawling.
Of course.
Well, I told you I'd gotten dozens, hundreds of emails and calls. That video got released and now people are driving to my house and they're knocking on the door and they're going, dude, are you okay?
Yeah.
And I realized pretty quick, they're not asking if I'm physically okay.
Yeah.
They're asking if I'm mentally okay. And Stack, that video, I felt like gave me this get out of jail free card, this excuse to go get mental health help. And my reputation would stay intact. Because we have the same stigma on the West Coast that you have on the East Coast, right? If you get mental health help, you're weak or you can't be trusted. Everybody walked on eggshells around you. They don't know what to, you know what I mean? They're like, oh, I don't know. All of that bullshit. I had the same. I'm like, dude, if I end up in a therapist's office, I am weak-minded. I'm lame, like, right? But now I'm like, oh, dude, I can go get help and no one will make fun of me. Right? This is a pass.
Yeah.
Because if anybody thinks less of me, I just show them the video and they go, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. I've earned the spot. Right? I got street cred now.
Yeah.
I got street cred. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to go get help. Well, I didn't know where to go and my department didn't have anything in place. So I called workers' comp and I said, hey, this is a workers' comp injury. I need mental health help. And the city was very accommodating. And they sent me to a guy who specialized in car accident victims.
Oh, so that's cool.
Yeah. I didn't know any better. I figured, hey man, I car accident victims too. Like, this is great. Like, let's do this. And right away, right, I can, like, the guy doesn't know what to do with me at all.
I was going to say, he's as unprepared as you are.
Correct. So my first ever therapist, I go and I sit down with this guy and I'm telling him about the nightmares. And he says, well, if you're having trouble sleeping, man, lay off the caffeine. At some point, like, I'm looking on his wall at all of his, I'm like, are you really a bona fide psychologist? Like, are you kidding me? You went to school for this? Like, this is your advice? So it got worse before it could get better. I'll be honest, at some point, it's like 2 a.m. I'm trying to get mental health help. I'm getting worse. The guy isn't helping me. I haven't slept in weeks.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting alone in the dark on my staircase. And in my head, I said, okay, it's 2 a.m. You just got to get to 2:01. And I did. I got to 2:01, watched the clock click. And then I just had this unbelievable dread. I go, oh my God, I have to get to 2:02.
Yeah, forget 3 o'clock.
Right. And for the first time in my life, Stack, I understood suicide. Because the way I describe it, every one of us, when we are fully functioning and healthy, no matter how bad things are right now, you can see light at the end of the tunnel, right? There's hope. Yeah, I'm sick right now and I have a cough, but by this Saturday it'll be gone. And then I can go ice skating with my wife or, right? Like I'm stuck at work. I've been mandoed again, but I got a camping trip, right? In 6 days, right? I can see further than the end of my nose.
Right.
But when you're in that darkness and you are in it, I can't see past 1 minute into the future. I can't see past the end of my nose. And I'm just in this world of hurt. And I remember thinking to myself, if I don't figure this out, I own a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Guaranteed I get some sleep, right? That will solve my sleep issue.
Mm-hmm.
But then I remember sitting there in the dark going, okay, hold on. This guy tries to kill me, misses, and I kill myself like
Yeah.
that's dumb. And then I remember also thinking, like most firefighters, I consider myself mentally tougher than most.
Mm-hmm.
I almost get murdered. And within about a month, I'm suicidal. Like, why? I am clearly not as mentally tough as I thought because I spiraled so quick.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that kind of made me laugh as well. I'm like, wow, buddy, like maybe you're not the badass you thought you were. Like you hit bottom pretty damn fast, like the wheels came off this bus pretty quick. And I was sitting in the dark, just kind of laughing at myself, like, how did I get here? Like what the hell? So I've actually reached out to a buddy of mine who's a firefighter, but he was a former cop. He was involved in an officer involved shooting. He killed a guy. It was deemed a clean shoot. He was cleared to go back to work, but it ended his career. He didn't want to do it anymore. And so he left the police department and joined the fire department. And I remember thinking, this is the guy that can help me, right? So you want to understand the power of peer support. Knowing there's a guy in my job that has been through what I've been through was huge. And so I threw him a lifeline. I drove, I didn't even call him. I drove to the firehouse that he was working and I was pretty desperate. I was in tears and I was like, dude, you gotta help me. Like you won your fight, but it ended your career, right? Like I lost my fight. Like what is happening to me? And I don't know what to do. And to his credit, he said, hey man, you need to go see the therapist that I worked with. He specializes in police.
Mm-hmm.
And he pulled out a tattered business card and he handed me a business card. And so I was introduced to a company called Focus Psychological Services. They're a third-party vendor. They have an exclusive contract with the city of San Diego. They only work with PD. There are 12 therapists on hand. The police can go unlimited visits as many times as they want to go. Even after they retire, they can still go for free. Any family member of the police officer that lives in the home, and if there's children involved, even if they're divorced, the children can go for free. It's an amazing program.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Well, I called them and I talked to this doctor and I said, look, man, I need your help, but I'm with the fire department. We don't have a contract with you. My insurance won't cover you. Workers' comp won't cover this. And I said, right now I'm on injury leave. I'm not getting any overtime on my paycheck. I can't afford you.
Right.
But if you will help me, just keep track of the hours. When I get back to work, I promise I will pay back in full, right? Like I will write it, but just please help me now. I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today kind of thing. Like hook me up, please, please, please. And the guy was so generous. A guy named Dr. Mark Foreman. And he said, buddy, I don't care about money. Who gives a crap about hours? Just get in here. And so I went down and I met with a psychologist. Well, Dr. Mark Foreman was former San Diego PD. So he was a cop and spoke our language, right? Like sense of humor, like all the same things fire has, PD has.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's talking to me on my level. He was good about not talking over my head. And we immediately started treatment. And I credit 3 people with saving my life. If my partner, Alex, hadn't jumped in and tackled that guy would have finished the job. I would be dead for sure. There's no doubt. My buddy, peer supporter, the former cop, he was my peer support, and I threw a lifeline. He caught it. To his credit, he didn't try to fix me. He just realized immediately I needed advanced level care, and he sent me to someone that he had been to, right? So someone he recommended, which is, God, that makes a lot of difference, right? When I go, hey man, go see this guy. He helped me, right? That is the highest praise you can receive. And then I credit Mark Foreman, who agreed to see me for free and basically pieced me back together. That made all the difference in the world. And so those 3 men I credit with.
Yeah. It's each of those gentlemen did a triage on you without even doing a triage on you. They just saw what you
Correct.
needed, really.
Correct.
And they took action.
Yeah, correct.
No questions asked, which is so rare.
So rare. And I, usually when I'm talking about stabbing, watch the video, it's not an issue. But when I start talking about the people who saved my life, who went out of their way and went above and beyond, holy crap, man, I well up with tears so quick. And I'm impressed right now. I'm not crying because it usually hit me right in the feels.
I can imagine. And I can understand why.
Yeah. So I am truly grateful to those guys. They saved my life.
So what kind of work and how long roughly did it take to get past those nightmares, to get past that time period where you were seeing this every night?
Yeah. Well, so this doctor, he pulls me in, looking into my signs and symptoms. We watch the video together, right? Like he has everything he needs. He knows what's going on. Well, we started a treatment called EMDR that very first day. Honestly, the reason I share my story, the reason I'm willing to travel all over the world to introduce firefighters to EMDR. And Zach, it blows my mind, man. I will be in a room of 20 people from one department, bring up EMDR. And there's always at least one guy in the room that's done it, loves it. It's helped him. Someone else in that room has never heard of it. And it drives me nuts, man, because honestly, if someone from your department falls through a roof, there's an investigation, you guys write up a report, I get to read it. Like you share that information so we can learn from each other. But to this day, and it's been 8 years and I've traveled, I've spoken in multiple countries and almost, I think now 38 states. And I've spoken to hundreds of people. I've spoken to 5 people, but always one person in the room has heard of EMDR, loves it. Someone else has never heard of it. And that pisses me off, quite frankly. We're not talking about mental health and we're not sharing strategies and tactics. And there is this treatment that absolutely brought me back from the brink of suicide quickly.
Hey guys, quick break right here just to check in and thank each of you for listening to the show. Your support has been paramount and I appreciate all of you. I have one request though. I need you to share the show with everyone you know. Help me get the word out and spread these stories as far and as wide as we can. While you're at it, please leave a review of the show wherever you happen to listen. Feel free to reach out to me at any time to share your story, to talk, or to pass on suggestions. Let's get on with the rest of the show.
EMDR fixed me so bad that I was like, I have to scream this from the mountaintops, right? Like people need to know that there is a therapy out there that is ridiculously helpful. And clearly, Stack, you've heard of it.
Yeah, actually my own therapist that I started going to a year and a half, 2 years ago. And She's part of what we call our resilience center in Prince William, and they're paid through the county and through the fire department, but they're not they don't report to anybody in the fire department.
That's awesome.
She specializes as well in EMDR, and we did a session, and then we kind of got not carried away. We kind of got carried towards a different topic, because at the time I was dealing with one thing, and then it was kind of focused on my mom's illness and her potential death, and so we kind of got away from EMDR. But I understand the basics of it, and I wish more people did understand it, and more people were exposed to it as a treatment.
Yes, yes, because it was amazing. And obviously after this event and my struggle with mental health and then doing MDR and making a full recovery, I've become so passionate about mental health. And then of course I'm listening to podcasts, I'm reading books, I'm getting to talk to people like yourself, from all over who are also passionate about it. And I've, devoted most of my career since my injury to trying to learn as much as I can about mental health. And it's my jam, I love it. So I learned about EMDR and how it works, and I've become obsessed with sleep
Mm-hmm.
and the quality of sleep. So I'm actually giving a lecture every day in January to my department for our paramedic CE.
Mm-hmm.
And they've given me 90 minutes to share what I've learned about sleep. And so I'm going to bring up EMDR and that sort of thing. So but I love this stuff, and the EMDR is so fascinating to me. The brain is so fascinating.
Well, and before we go any further, let's break it down. So, if they've listened to my show for any amount of time, they've heard me mention EMDR and what it means. But I'll mention it just in case we have listeners who aren't familiar. Eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. Correct?
Yes.
And so, basically, the analogy that I've used is it's kind of like that card catalog. Every memory is kind of categorized as it comes into the brain, and
Yes.
memories like your fight and you're getting stabbed kind of if that memory gets interrupted in some way, it gets filed away improperly. And EMDR is kind of a way of bringing that memory out, kind of distracting the brain and going, we're going to take this card and it's going to go here, and we'll close that drawer, and then it'll come back and you focus, and it's kind of recatalogued correctly.
Okay. I like it. Yes.
And that's
So the
a
metaphor
very rudimentary,
Yes.
very
Yes.
rudimentary description from my point of view.
So here's how I'd like to describe it and see if this analogy works too, because I'm going to use it in January when I give the CE. Do you know I love that stick that you have for a dog, and it looks like a spaghetti ladle, but the tennis ball fits in it,
And you
and then
fling
you
it.
can fling it, man.
Yeah.
That ball just goes for 100 miles. And you don't throw your shoulder out. Yeah.
Saves your shoulder for us old guys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So your memories are facts and emotions. And so you sometimes have memories that an emotion is attached, like a ball in that tennis ball thrower, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you sleep at night, you go through 3 different phases: deep
Mhm.
sleep, light sleep, and REM sleep. And REM stands for rapid eye movement. That's dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's fascinating what they've discovered and learned about sleep in the last 20 years. But it is REM sleep, where your body, while you're dreaming, your brain goes through and it looks for all of the tennis balls attached
Mm-hmm.
and goes, okay, here's a memory, there's an emotion, let's separate them. And now we know to stack, we know where to put, as you said, we know where to file this memory, but we don't need the emotion that's attached to it. So the best 2 examples I give you is, you get in a fight with your wife, you're arguing, and you go to bed. And then you wake up and you're like, you're not angry anymore, right? You go, babe, I'm so sorry about last night, right? Like, I was in a bad mood. I took it out on you. Please forgive me. Like, that was uncalled for. Because I go through and I go, man, I don't need that anger anymore. Like
Right.
okay. But the other better example is, let's say you're driving home from work and you're on a major road and you're going to turn left across this major road. And a big rig is coming opposite direction. And you go, oh, I can make it. And you start to turn left. And you very quickly realize, like, oh shit, I'm not going to make it, right? This truck is about to T-bone me. Could you gun it and the truck air horns and misses you by just
Right.
inches? You get through that turn and you go, holy shit, that was close. Whoa, right? Like, Jesus. And that fear response to almost getting T-boned by a big rig. Well, when you get REM sleep at night, your brain goes, okay, there's fear associated with this. We don't need the fear, but man, we really need to remember when you're taking a left, don't fucking do that, right?
Yeah.
You wake up in the morning, you've done everything right. You've got a good night's sleep. Now you go to take that left turn again and you go, okay, hold on, right? Like, let me think this one through. Do I got space this time? No big rigs coming, like I'm good. Well, what if you don't get that rim and you don't separate the tennis ball? That emotion is still stuck. So now you go to take a left and all of a sudden you have a fear response.
Mm-hmm.
There's no truck, no one coming, but out of the blue, you have this reaction, this fear reaction that doesn't match the event.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I reacting this way when there is no danger? Right? That because you didn't give your brain a chance to separate the emotion. Well, that is one of the signs of PTSD, right? Is now you have an emotional reaction to an event and it doesn't match.
Right.
And then, of course, when it gets really bad, now you and I are at a bar, sharing a drink, having fun, and a truck drives through the parking lot. My conscious mind doesn't see it, but my subconscious does. It goes, truck. And I have a reaction. And now I'm at the bar and my heart rate goes up to 150 and I'm clenching my beer cup and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on? That's PTSD, right? So what is EMDR? Eye movement, desensitization. It is your eyes traveling back and forth rapidly. It is rapid eye movement. It is REM. And so I got in this fight. Every time I tried to go to sleep, every time I'd go into REM, every time I try to dream, my brain is like, okay, we got to get rid of this emotion. So let's redo this fight and let's figure out where we went wrong. Let's deal with the anger and guilt and shame in not only losing a knife fight, but getting my partner stabbed, right? The guilt for not reading the situation well, right? The guilt of triaging that guy from a block away. So I walked into that call not ready, right? Not mentally ready. So I had all these emotions attached to this event. Well, every time I try to dream, it was so violent that I was waking up. So to go to a therapist and to do basically REM while I'm awake and I can, basically manually pry off the emotion from the event was just, in his office, I had slept for weeks. In his office, we EMDR'd and I only got through the first 10 minutes of the call. But I was working out the emotions and the guilt and the anger and the frustration and then doing these rapid eye movements. Well, I went home that first day and while I was driving back, I felt more relaxed. I remember feeling like physically a little more calm. And the first night after doing one session of EMDR, I slept for 4 hours. I woke up screaming. I woke up tasting blood in my mouth, but I wasn't soaked in sweat.
Right.
And my heart rate was not 150, it was 120, right? But I went from no sleep or 1 hour sleep to no sleep. That 4 hours of sleep was heaven, right? And immediately I go, oh, I'm getting better, right? I'm healing. And so after every EMDR session, I would sleep a little bit more and a little bit more. And I would wake up, I would sit up in bed, but I wasn't tasting blood in my mouth. And I wasn't trying to gouge the guy's eyes out. I would sit up with a start, but not soaked in sweat. My blood pressure was now within normal range and I'd slept 6 hours. And the next EMDR session, 6.5 hours, right? But every time just getting better and better and better. And I was like, this is heaven, right? Like, this is awesome. So I highly encourage people, if there are any calls, and if you try to talk about them, you get a lump in your throat or you get angry, right? Any you can think about and emotion is attached to it, you need to do EMDR, right? Like, that's how you deal with it.
EMDR is fascinating. Like you said, it's REM. Basically, it mimics
Yep.
that REM sleep, and which that automatically brings an issue up for us as firefighters. Going back to your other passion there, sleep, because especially, you're talking about running on engine, the busiest engine in San Diego, and
Yep.
you're running 25. Well, let's go with 25. You can just go 20 calls in a 24-hour shift. That's a lot of calls. Whether you're going to the hospital or not, that's a lot of calls.
Right.
And that is automatically interrupting your REM sleep. You can't avoid it. You can't get into REM. You can't get into a cycle of sleep when you're running 20 calls a day. Let's be honest, even if we're running 10 calls and 4 of those calls are after 10 o'clock, you can't get into a healthy sleep cycle. It doesn't matter if you're running 20 or 10. If your sleep is interrupted, your REM sleep is, for lack of a better word, fucked. And if you run something that day that's traumatic or notable or sticks with you, and then you get to quote unquote sleep that evening, but you don't get into that REM sleep, you can't file it away, sans emotion. And so now we're just starting a cycle, because just like you said, you just got off a 96-hour tour. And if you did multiple calls like that and multiple nights interrupted with REM, you've got a shit ton of stuff already built up and categorized incorrectly.
Correct. And it's funny because obviously with what we see and what we do, you run a higher risk for mental health injury. And then the one thing that fixes it is a good night's sleep.
You can't.
And we fuck with that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's right. It's like, okay, I'm going to injure you and then I'm not going to let you have a cast on your arm. Right. Like it's a double-edged sword. We get hit both ways. This job, if you saw something horrible, you might be able to make it your entire career if every night you got a decent night's sleep and you could process the calls correctly. And so here's another thing and this is, I'm not knocking my department. I don't know any department that does critical incident stress management correctly.
Mm-mm.
And so
I agree with you.
The model was created by Dr. Jeff Mitchell, who was a former firefighter, realized that firefighters did better after a bad call than cops, because cops rode solo.
Solo. Yeah.
Yeah. But firefighters would get in the rig and then we were all talking to each other and we were decompressing without even realizing it. Right. So he creates this model, but the model is, you have this bad event, let's say 4 p.m. Well, the first step is what's called a diffusing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is to bring everyone together, go, hey, that was a tough call. We're not going to talk about it. A little bit, like, this didn't go well, or, this poor person died, this little kid got killed. Like, that was tragic. And I'm really sorry you guys, that happened. But what I need you to do is go home. Your shift is over. Don't stay and work. Go get sleep. And then we're going to come back 2 or 3 days later, after everyone's had a chance to separate that tennis ball off the stick, right? Like, remove the emotion. Now let's revisit the call 2 days later. Now let's deep dive into what that call was about. Now I'm looking at people going, who is still angry? Who is still sad? Who is still showing emotion? They're frustrated with that call. Those are the people that I need to encourage to then go get more help. But most departments, and that's, again, not my department's fault, but if you send us all home today, 2 days later, all of us are scattered, right? Like, we had one guy who was in overtime. One guy was on a trade.
Yeah.
Today, or 2 days from now, one guy calls out sick. I couldn't get all those people back together if I wanted to. But they're gone. And that's my only frustration with, Mitchell's models is that you're assuming that as a crew, we're the same crew the following shift. And that, because we're so short-handed, that rarely happens.
It's also
But
assuming
most of our departments.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
It's also assuming some personal responsibility on the firefighter's part. So you're told, okay, we're going to process this after a couple of days of solid relaxation, some sleep.
Yes.
But let's be honest, you'd run a call that's notable like that. Quite often you're going home and you're going, fuck, I'm grabbing a drink. A drink turns into 3 or whatever it is. And then you've got your sleep depressed again because you're not going to get into a proper REM cycle because alcohol inhibits your REM cycle. And you're going to get a bunch of light sleep, which is not going to do anything to help, for, again, lack of a better term, unfuck your brain.
Yes.
And then you're going to come back and it's already going to be not processed correctly. And it's going to be not only not in process, but it's going to be multiplied. It's going to be that much worse 2 days from now.
Yes. And all of this for me, it's just education. We have not, when I travel the country, I show everybody the 12 PowerPoint slides that I received in my career about mental health, right? 12 slides. And I just take one PowerPoint and I divide it into a little, 4x3 grid with the PowerPoints and just to show you, this is all I've received in my entire career about mental health help. I'd never heard of EMDR. I didn't know how important sleep was. I didn't understand that drinking prevented sleep, right? None of that. So I didn't know how sleep worked. I was, 8 years into my career. I'm on heavy rescue. I'm working downtown on the busiest engine in the city and the fourth busiest in the country. My ego, if you'd been like, hey man, this is not healthy. Honestly, I did say things like, well, I'll sleep when I'm dead, right? Or, right? Like that's the price of being a badass, right? You couldn't have told me. You could have told me. I wouldn't have heard you. I didn't want to hear you. I wanted to be a badass.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's like, okay, let's at least educate everybody and at least give them the tools they need to make better decisions. That fascinating to me. And so you didn't do EMD or you didn't do REM because you were drinking and you didn't separate that emotion. And now you're showing signs and you're having nightmares and you can't sleep. And okay, no problem. Just go do EMDR.
Right.
Let's do it while you're awake. Since you're refusing to do it correctly while you're asleep, well, there's a treatment that allows you to do it while you're awake. So we'll manually pry it off since you're robbing yourself of sleep. So that, to me, kind of blows my mind that all of this exists.
Yeah. And then, well, again, it goes back to making sure people are aware of EMDR and making sure that they have access to treatment. And like you said, that foundation that you found, you got lucky.
Insanely lucky.
Yeah.
Right. Insanely lucky.
Yeah. So it's making sure that we can get first of all, the knowledge that this treatment is out there. And the second of all, that there's people that will work with firefighters in every state with this kind of a treatment.
Yes. I am obsessed with that. Just get the word out. I didn't know anything about sleep, and I've spent the last 2 or 3 years. Like I track every night. I have a sleep coach.
Yeah, right.
He's yeah, buddy. A buddy of mine, Dr. Glenn Landry, and I'll see if I can get him on your show. He's a sleep doctor who specializes with first responders. And so I worked with him for over a year, and every week we would meet and he would look at my sleep patterns and, give me advice. And, I've changed my entire mindset, since I'm so obsessed with mental health. It starts with a really good night's sleep. So I'm, and here's the thing. I know when I go work at a busy house, okay, I know I'm going to get screwed tonight. And so I'm very aware of that. I still work the shift. I have a ton of fun. I still run a ton of calls. But if any of those calls hit me in the feels, right, I go, okay, well, REM is out because I've got to run 6-8 calls after midnight. I better go EMDR this call later so I don't deal with the consequences, a month, a year, 10 years down the line.
Right.
So I feel because I have the knowledge, I'm fearless now because it's like, okay, I don't mind running calls all night. I don't want to do it regularly now. Like I could never go back to a busy house like that and just run my brain into the ground. I couldn't do it, but I don't shy away from working those busy shifts because I know I have EMDR in my back pocket.
Right.
Right. And I know how critical incident stress diffusings and debriefings work, and I understand how important they are. I don't shy away from those either. I welcome those, and I talk to my young guys because I'm a captain now. I talk to the young guys. No, these are unbelievably helpful. And so to go back to that a little bit, just more that I've learned, right? My favorite story is about a World War II vet. And this guy is a good man, and he raised his children and his grandchildren, and he's a good man. But the family has learned, never bring up World War II. He gets very angry very quickly, right? And he doesn't like to talk about it at all. Well, now he's in his 90s, and they're doing a reunion with his squad, and his children have had enough. Every time they try to bring up him going to this reunion, he doesn't want any part of it, and he gets very grumpy. Well, they pool their resources. They buy him a ticket. They don't take no for an answer. They put him on a plane and they send him to this reunion. And so, they're sitting around a bar, these 8 vets, and they're sharing stories. And it finally gets around to him, and he starts crying. And he says, I never like to talk about the war because, one time my regiment, we were hunkered down and we were about to take on this, the Germans were coming. And he goes, a tank came through, and he goes, I went to fire a tank, anti-tank round. I missed the tank and it hit a building, and the building fell down. And he goes, before that fight started, I saw 2 nuns and 10 kids take shelter in that building. And he goes, I basically brought that building down on their head, and I'm just, devastated that I murdered those people. Well, one of the other guys starts laughing, and he goes, buddy, I was there. He goes, I saw that shot. He goes, you missed that tank by a mile. He goes, but what you didn't see is as that fight started and the gunfire started, those 2 nuns and 10 kids ran out of the back of that building. There was no one in that building, and that building came down. There was no one inside. And this guy was, right, just blown away that he carried all this guilt for the people who he wasn't responsible for killing. Well, what I've learned is, because I've done now a lot of debriefings with a lot of departments all over the country. Kind of the big thing that happened is when a call doesn't go well, right? It's even when you run with a dead kid. I mean, those can be very traumatic, but it's usually what causes problems is that the call didn't go right? Like the ambulance took too long to get there, or time to get off scene took too long, or they showed up at the hospital and the hospital wasn't ready. Right? Like if we have that guilt and anger and shame that the would have, could have, should have, if this call had just gone better, there would have been a different outcome. Well, when you sit in a circle and you're diffusing and debriefing, you are literally getting the slice of the pie from everybody on that call to see a more complete picture of what happened. And the debriefings I've seen go really, really well that were hugely helpful is when, the fire crew is pissed that it took the ambulance so long to get there. But then you hear from the ambulance and they say, we got dispatched, but we got stuck behind a train.
Right.
We called dispatch. Dispatch realized that even if they called the next closest ambulance, it still would have taken them longer. And so even though we got stuck behind a train, but it answers that question. Why did this take so long? Right? That kind of thing. And I've seen just anger and frustration dissipate immediately when you get to learn, you get to hear everyone's perspective on the call. And so that is really what debriefings are meant for. And so I tell my people, hey, you might be sitting on that piece of information that relieves the stress for somebody else.
Right.
You might be holding that, hey man, I saw the 2 nuns and 10 kids run out the back of the building, so that somebody else isn't angry. So you don't have to be angry at that call. You don't have to be frustrated. If a debriefing or diffusing is ever called, go, because I don't want to be responsible for sitting on information that can make somebody else feel better, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But it's, excuse me, it's, as you said, it's all about how it's done, because these done improperly. And I've had a number of people come on this show and say, yeah, they made us do X, Y, and Z. And, F-cism, I'm never doing it again. And it's not so much F-cism, it's the way it was implemented more than anything. I'm not saying it's a perfect system, and when it's implemented right, it works every time. It doesn't. Right. But it only works as well as the people that are involved in it. And so if you've got people that can lead it properly, if you've got the scene and the setting correct, it can benefit everybody. And you don't turn to the newest guy, the youngest rookie, and say, hey, what are your thoughts about this call? What went wrong? What went right? And then this guy's like, I'm not going to say what went wrong in front of my captain because I think he fucked up. And so then you get, I'm good. I have nothing to say. And then the senior guy says the same thing, and then everyone follows suit. So that's, it's all about how it's implemented.
That is so important. Whoever runs it has to be really, really well trained.
Mm-hmm.
And I love sharing the story. I was in Pennsylvania giving a talk, and they had a critical incident. And so they invited me. They go, will you come and sit in on this? And I'd already given my talk, so everyone in the department knew who I was. So I was honored. I was like, absolutely, I'll sit in on this. So I sat in at a firehouse, and they brought in this guy to run a SISM. And this dude was a therapist. He was probably 100 pounds overweight. He was bald on top with a ponytail. He had an earring. He had his shirt buttoned to like 3 buttons, just a hairy chest with like 4 gold chains.
Everyone's lost interest in what he has to say already.
Immediately he walked to the room, and I went, oh, this is not going to go well. I was like, oh no. And he sat down and he goes, all right, guys, we're here to talk about our emotions. And you know what? We might cry today, but that's okay. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, oh God, like, I was like, no, these guys, I'm not kidding you. They practically picked him up and threw him out of the station, and he bounced up the hood of his car.
Yeah.
And they turned around and go, Sidham is stupid. And I was like, guys, like, damn it.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of potential for doing them poorly. And I understand why they've gotten a bad rep, but I just feel so bad when I know how they're supposed to work. I know how effective they can be. And even my own department doesn't embrace them correctly.
Right.
They usually will try to do a full diffusing on the first day and decide who they need to follow up with by listening to everyone's stories. And people are angry, but I'm going, hey man, you haven't given them a chance to sleep and separate those emotions. And then they go, hey, if you want to go home, you can go home. If you want to stay, you can stay. And most of the guys are like, no, we'll stay. Either they run calls all night.
Right.
I'm like, well, now you're so fucked. Right.
Right.
You don't know about EMDR. You didn't give yourself a chance to REM.
Nope.
You didn't to breathe properly. Like, so, doing podcasts like this, if there are any chiefs listening, right? Like really understanding what you're doing in mental health is so important to do it correctly.
It is. It is paramount. Yeah.
It's paramount.
So you do, we'll go all the way back. You do this EMDR, these sessions for a bit of time. How long does it take to get you physically and emotionally ready to get back on the job?
I returned to work 4 months to the day. So I got stabbed June 24th. I walked back into the firehouse October 24th. But so I EMDR'd that stabbing, and it took us months to get through that, right? There was a lot of guilt and anger and shame. One of the things was when I got stabbed, I decided I didn't want to, I decided I had to stay on my feet because if I went down, then that guy will know he got me. Right. So I stayed up, and I was tripoding because I couldn't breathe. Well, I held on to that railing that we talked about. I held on to that railing, and I would not let go. And in my head, somehow I got the thought, if I let go of this railing, I'll die.
Mm.
Right. So just to give you an idea, like where I'm at mentally, the wheels have come off the bus, right? Like I am panicked, I'm scared, and I'm holding onto this railing. Well, Alex, he he crawled off the pile and he was, I mean, blood was pumping out of his body, right? He was bleeding to death. I needed the trauma bag because in our trauma bag, I've got quick clot and I've
Mhm.
got tourniquets and I've got trauma bandages. I didn't bring the trauma bag with me because my patient wasn't a trauma patient. He was a drunk male who was walking and talking.
And you parked a city block away.
We parked a city block away. Well, I'm seeing him bleed out. I know that I need to give myself, I need to do a 3-sided occlusive dressing
Mhm.
and I might have to needle decompress myself. All of that is in the trauma bag. Well, we're sitting there. We called Cover Now and we're waiting for help to come. And I'll tell you, they got there fast, but the time it took from when you call for help and then you're waiting for help to arrive, that was a lifetime.
Yeah.
Well, I'm holding onto the railing and I remember I was looking a block away at our rig and the railing didn't go all the way to the fire engine. It stopped 30 feet short. And in my head, I said, well, I can't get to the trauma bag because I can't let go of the railing because if I let go of the railing, I'll die.
Mhm.
So I didn't help my partner or myself. And then the other thing you learn, right, when you're on an airplane and the oxygen masks fall out, what do they say?
Help yourself.
Put the mask on yourself so that you can help somebody else.
Right.
But in my head, I'm going, even if I have the gear, if I had the gear, technically I should treat myself first.
Mhm.
Make sure that it doesn't, my pneumothorax doesn't turn into a tension pneumothorax. But who takes care of themselves before their partner?
Right.
Right. And so I should have helped my partner first. And I made it work. Like I grabbed gauze out of our drug box and, I shoved them onto his shoulder. But in my head, I'm like, I need to fix myself, but I should fix him first. But theoretically, I should fix myself. But I went in this circle
Yeah.
where I didn't help either of us. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's really hard to describe that panic, right? And that thought process. And so really the guilt of like, I jumped into a knife fight. I dragged my partner into it. He almost died because of me. And then I didn't fucking help him.
That's heavy. Yeah.
Heavy. So it took me months to EMDR that, right?
Mhm.
I was sleeping better and better and better, but it took me months to deal with the guilt and the shame and the anger of that aspect of the fight. But what I got to tell you is when that finally I felt like, okay, I got a full night's sleep. I could talk through the entire call, not break down in tears. I can tell I feel a lot less guilt and anger. But then I said, what I want to do is I want to EMDR the other calls,
Mm.
the ones that I've been carrying with me for 20 years,
Mhm.
right? I want to EMDR the little girl that's seized to death and no treatment. Nothing I did stopped the seizure. And I drove her to the hospital and, they pronounced her brain dead on arrival. I want to EMDR the woman that was gang raped and they left objects inside of her body,
Mm.
right? Like, suddenly I'm like, oh, I have this powerful tool with me. Like, let me EMDR all the rest of these calls, right?
Mhm.
And so I made my way through about 5 or 6 other calls. Well, October 24th, when I walked back into the firehouse, I got to tell you, man, I was mentally stronger
Mhm.
than I had ever been. Because one, I had unloaded all of the emotions for every call that has ever bothered me. I'm starting with a blank slate. And I know going forward, any call that I run, that's a bad one. If I can't sleep on it, I'll EMDR it. To this day, I feel invincible, right? Like I am fearless. Like, let's run a dead baby. I'm not happy about it. I don't want to do it, but I'm not scared of it because I know that I know what to do with that emotion,
Yeah, you
right?
got
I
the
know
tools.
how to, I got the tools. And so I walked through my first session 4 months later, just stronger than I had ever been, mentally and physically stronger than I had ever been. Um, and again, something I want to share with our people. You don't have to carry these calls for the rest of your career.
So then how does the speaking gig come about? How do you start talking about it? How do you start sharing this story over continents and countries and states?
Yeah, such a cool, fun ride. Um, One of the things I was doing while I was healing, and initially when I could not sleep, I remember thinking, I don't know when this trial is going to come out, but I had heard that one of the tools that a defense attorney will use is they wait till the last possible second to file, right, or to defend, so that everyone's fuzzy on the details.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that was my fear, which is looking back a little irrational. The defense doesn't get to pick when the court case happens, but in my head, I remember thinking, I have to write everything down so that I will be ready for the court case. So I was journaling in the middle of the night, writing down every detail I could think of. What was interesting is as I was getting EMDR and I was sleeping more and more and more, when I was awake though, I would journal, and I noticed my handwriting was getting cleaner, right? Like I was writing like a crazy person while I was going through the nightmares. My R's were backwards. I was writing in blood, like it's terrifying looking. But as I was getting help, my writing looked better and better and cleaner and cleaner. Well, I wanted to write an article, and I learned about EMDR and how effective it was. And so Jim's magazine, it's a national magazine, but their headquarters is in San Diego. So I reached out to them and I said, hey, can I write an article for you guys? And they said, yeah. So my article came out in February 2016, and I was on the cover, which was cool. I was on the cover of Jim's. Well, this lady called me. This is, June 2016. She goes, look, I read your article. I really liked it. I'm putting on a conference in New Jersey, and I'd like you to be the keynote. And I basically want you to talk about your article, talk about this event that you've been through. And I said, well, ma'am, how do you know I'm any good at speaking? And I said, well, I don't, but you're a good writer. And so I'm taking a chance on you, but you'll be the keynote. You're going to speak to about 400 people. She goes, well, what do you charge? And I said, $100. She goes, done. So she paid for my airfare. She paid for my hotel. And then I gave a 90-minute talk, based on this article. And looking back, it was pretty rough, right? But it was basically the framework of what I do now. And I didn't know this, but people go to conferences from other conferences, right? And they go and they look for people they like, talent, stories, ideas, and then they bring them to their conference. And I didn't know that, but I got a call shortly after my New Jersey. That was in November of 2016. I got a call from a couple other people. Hey, we'd like you to come back. And, we have a conference in Pennsylvania. We have a conference in Florida. And they said, what do you charge? And I said, $100. And one guy was really cool. He's like, dude, I'm not going to pay $100. He goes, I'll pay you $300. And I'm like, holy shit. Like $300. I'm perfection. I was like, wow. And he goes, well, send me an invoice. I said, okay. And I said, I don't have an invoice. I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, well, I'll make one. And I'll send it to you. And then you sign it, send it back. I said, okay. So he sent me this invoice, and it said, speaking fee, $750 with a $450 discount for $300. And I was like, holy shit, I could be charging $750. Like, wow. Well, eventually somebody recommended a manager. And so I talked to a manager. I said, ma'am, I said, I don't know if you can help me, but I'm starting to get invitations, all over the place to be the keynote speaker at these conferences. And she said, well, what are you charging? And I said, well, ma'am, I don't mean to brag, but I charge $300, but I'm confident I can get 750. And she laughed and she goes, dude, the going rate is $2,500. And I go, ma'am, there is no one on earth that would pay me that much money for a 90-minute talk. Like, no. But she goes, well, that's why you hired me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, lady, like, you're crazy, but all right. And so sure enough, she goes, you need to have a website. And I'm like, really? I need to have like for what? She goes, well, people need to research you and
Right.
look at who you are, what you do. And so I laughed a little bit. You said you would look at the website. But yeah, then all of my contracts go through her, and she handles booking my airfare, my hotel. And then it just slowly built, one turned into three turned into eight,
Right.
8 turned into a dozen. So February of 2020, I was booked all over the world, all of 2020. And I was actually filling out paperwork on a plane. I was flying back from Canada. I was filling out paperwork on a plane to take a leave of absence from my job
Mm-hmm.
because I was about to just go on this amazing trip. And then obviously, right, COVID just
Mm-hmm.
shut everything down. And I'm so glad it did, because it reminded me my primary job, right,
Right.
is to be a firefighter, be good at my job. This other thing is a fun side hustle, not to be confused with my profession.
Right.
And all of these trips I had planned all over the world ended up being on Zoom, which just bummed me out.
Yeah.
I was so bummed. But it was fun. And that's how it turned into just this thing, that I get asked to speak everywhere now. It's so cool. So anyway,
Excuse
that's
me.
a long story.
No,
Sorry.
you're good. So you mentioned the trial. When did the trial take place?
The trial was February 2016. So what is that? 8 months after the event. The most intense. That was so gnarly. Because it was a high profile case, that courtroom was packed,
Mm-hmm.
and there were news crews, just lighting the back row. Like it was a circus. The gnarliest thing that came from it, more and more video
Mm-hmm.
was released during the trial. And there was a video angle that I had never seen before, but it showed my captain pushing the guy over the seat, the
Mm-hmm.
park bench. Well, that was the defense attorney's primary showing that we started the fight.
Right.
Up until that point, the news crews are hailing us as heroes. Alex and I are going to luncheons and
Mm-hmm.
breakfasts. We are, right, Alex was being adorned with medal after medal for saving my life.
Mm-hmm.
He got 3 different medals of valor. We're both awarded the Purple Heart from the VFW. Like, just, it was surreal. But the media latched onto that, and suddenly the perspective changed. And the media is now saying, firefighters pick a fight with a homeless man, right? Like,
Right.
suddenly the dynamic has changed, and we're no longer heroes, we're bullies.
Mm-hmm.
And guys on my job really started harassing my captain, blaming him
Mm.
for us getting hurt. And the wildest thing, Stack, right? At the moment the knife went in my body, the 4 of us were standing within 3 feet of each other, right? I'm on the other side of the railing, but my 3 guys are standing right behind me. We're all 3 feet apart. Well, as the years passed, my partner and my engineer, Charlie, they did not get mental health help. They did not do EMDR. and they try to manage it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
All of us are captains now, but those two guys who were on the rescue team, who were active in our department, taught in our academy, taught a bunch of classes, were really engaged. They both now work at very quiet firehouses. They do their job, they go home. My captain started drinking heavily after the trial.
Mm-hmm.
A year later, February 2017, he gets in a domestic dispute with his girlfriend and he hit her.
Mm-hmm.
And he was arrested. And a year after my trial, I'm back in court and I'm testifying on behalf of my captain. And that's tricky because I don't want to condone domestic violence, but I'm trying to explain to the judge what is going on here, right? And the judge, it was a wobbler. He could have made it a misdemeanor or made it a felony. And so I'm in court trying to explain to the judge what all of this is. But I'm babbling, I don't understand how to explain what EMDR is and PTSD and all of these things. The judge was very nice and he said, I appreciate you coming here and sharing your point of view. And then he hit the gavel and he hit my captain with a felony.
Mm-hmm.
So my captain lost his job. Now, thankfully, he didn't have to go to prison, but he was assigned an ankle bracelet.
Mm-hmm.
He's lost his job as a San Diego fire captain, right? So the outcome, 4 of us standing within 3 feet of each other.
Right.
I get good mental health help and I get to travel and speak. I still teach at the academy. I help out in our medic program. I'm involved in every way I can. And we've lost 3. 1 completely, who's now a felon, and 2 who are, I would argue, less engaged than they once were. And so again, just to emphasize how important mental health help is and getting good treatment, because there's an example of one event with 4 very different outcomes.
And I assume Stabby, as you affectionately call him, was found guilty.
Guilty, sentenced to 24 years, 6 months for 2 counts of attempted murder. He has to serve at least 80%. So even with good behavior, he'll be out in 20 years, 3 months, something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm scheduled to retire 20 years, 1 month. So I'm off the job about 2 months before he gets out of prison. So
there you go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So let's get to my last 2 questions.
Fire away.
I titled this show, The Things We All Carry. And it's based off of a novel by Tim O'Brien. And the book is called The Things They Carried. And it discusses a platoon in Vietnam, basically, and the tools they carry into battle, but what they bring out of battle as well. And so I thought that it parlayed well into what we're talking about on this show. And so I like to ask everybody about an everyday carry. What is something that you carry every day with you that if you don't have it, you're going to end up feeling naked?
Ooh. I have gotten really good at mindfulness, staying present. I do that in my hour drive to work and from work. I purposely try to get my head in a good space. So that hour drive is my tool. I journal. I love to journal now. That was not something I ever did, but after my injury, I found I really enjoyed journaling. My journal's right here somewhere. So that for me is that hour ride with my mindfulness, practices. That is a tool that has really helped keep me on the straight and narrow. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I think that's the one thing I try to explain when people go, I don't really have anything physical. It doesn't have to be physical. It's just something you carry with you. And a thought or a mindfulness practice is something that you carry with you.
Yeah.
So what about a book?
The things they carry, what was it? Oh, buddy. Okay.
Go ahead. The book is called
The
The Things They Carried, and it's by Tim O'Brien.
Tim O'Brien. So, I am obsessed now with audiobooks because it's an hour of just listening to people who are so much smarter than me.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm going to order that book, and it'll be one that I listen to on my way to work. So I love brain books, how the brain works.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a book I'm currently listening to. I'm only 5% in, but it's called Made to Stick
Made to Stick.
by Chip Heath
Okay.
and Dan Heath. So what's cool stuff like how come and they give an example of like the myth that Halloween candy, somebody would put a razor blade
Right.
in candy. Well, it was so effective in the 80s, it scared the shit out of people. And to this day, like people are worried about their kid trick or treating, but they looked into it and that has never happened in the history of ever. So how come that myth sticks,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like how come the myth that you can see the Great Wall of China from space, like why does that stick?
Right.
When basically it's less than the length of a freeway, right? The width of a freeway, in which case everyone from space can see every freeway on it, right?
Exactly.
Like, how come that sticks in your brain? So I'm only 5% in, but I love how it started. Two books, one that I absolutely loved that really helped me with the guilt I carried about holding onto that handrail is called Meditations on Violence by Rory Miller.
Okay.
And this guy is a corrections officer. And if he would say, in every sense of the word, he is a combat expert. But he breaks it down. He goes, the chasm between training on the mats, martial arts, and then real violence is a very real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he's been in 5 real fights to the death, and none of them went well, and none of them, his training didn't help them on any of them. And so it's just a fascinating book. And he shares the story of he's walking the halls of his prison and he's drinking a cup of coffee, he's starting his shift, and he didn't know that at 0900, all the prisoners were going to riot. And so he says he's walking the halls, that clock strikes 9 and the prison just goes sideways. And all of a sudden 3 prisoners charge at him. And he said the first thing that popped into his brain was that the coffee cup belonged to the prison. And if it broke, he would get in trouble. And so he's fighting 3 guys protecting the coffee cup.
Right. Instead of himself.
Instead of himself, instead of throwing the coffee in someone's face,
Right.
cracking it over the head and using the sharp edges to drive people, he's like, oh no, I have to protect this coffee cup. And that one story really helped me with me holding onto that handrail, because my first thought was, oh man, I can't go down. I got to hold on to this handrail. And it doesn't make sense, right? Like there's no equation between a handrail and knife.
Right.
But in my head, I'm like, oh man, I got to hold on to this thing. So stuff like that, just learning how the brain works when it is under extreme stress. And Stack, I got to tell you, it's my favorite question when I travel and give stories, or, share stories. People always come up and share the stories of their violence that they've been involved in. And my favorite question is, in the heat of it, did you do anything weird? Right? Did you make any weird decision? And honestly, like 100% of the time, they go, yeah, one guy was getting stabbed and the monitor was there. And the guy goes, oh man, this monitor costs $15,000. If it breaks, I'm going to get in trouble. He used his body as a human shield to protect the monitor from the knife. Right. So, and I go, yes, that's what I'm talking about. Like that weird decision-making process.
Right.
That's another good book, especially for any first responders who've experienced real violence. I think that book does a really good job of helping you understand your brain, when you are in it.
Right.
So that's just two. I've got a dozen on I'm currently actively listening to like 6 books at
Yeah.
the same time. So
I get that completely.
anyway,
I'm going to assume with your deep
so there's
dive
2
on,
books I really like.
I'm going to assume on your deep dive for sleep that you've gotten into Matthew Walker.
Oh yeah, Matt Walker's awesome.
All right.
Um,
And then
yeah.
a book about the brain. There was a fascinating little book I read, and it's an easy read, but it's fascinating. And it kind of turns some of the research on the brain upside down. And it's called 7.5
Okay.
Lessons
Oh, yeah.
of the Brain.
Okay, I'm writing that down.
And you might find that one pretty fascinating. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Awesome.
I saw it as a more hopeful image of the brain, if that makes any sense. And maybe after you read it or you
Yeah,
hear
yeah.
it, you tell me what you think.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so I'm a captain, but I've only been a captain for a year. Um, and so I really wanted to put some effort into leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, the Admiral William McRaven, the guy that did that talk at a college graduation on why you should make your bed.
Right.
He has books that I swear to God, they're written like children's books for adults. Like each chapter is 2 pages. It's a story with a parable. And I mean, you can consume it in one sitting, right? You can sit down for lunch. By the time you're done with your sandwich, you've read the whole book cover to cover. So he's got another one called The Wisdom of the Bullfrog.
Okay.
That's guy. I could listen to that guy talk all day long. So that's a leadership book. I really like that one.
I'll put them all out there. Those are, I mean, I love every one of them that you put out there. That's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I could keep going. The leadership books, I've read probably 10 of those. And then anything on the brain, Atomic Habits.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't start with you, which it didn't start with you. It's more about ACEs
Mm-hmm.
and how genetics get passed down. So I think that's fascinating. Blake by Malcolm Gladwell. Oh my God.
Blake is wonderful. Yes.
You familiar with Malcolm Gladwell?
Oh yeah.
Well, he shares the story of a fire captain who makes a split second decision and saves all his guys' life. And then, right. I'm like, oh, I love this guy. So there's another how your brain works.
Well, there you go.
Stuff. So,
well, sir, I appreciate this conversation very much.
Yeah. 2 hours, man. I'm sorry. That was a long one.
No, don't apologize at all. This is perfect. I love it. I'm not afraid to put out long episodes. So this is perfect. I appreciate every second of it.
Oh, Dak, thanks for the invite, man. This is great. Are you a speaker? Do you speak it?
I haven't got on board the speaking circuit yet. I need to. It's something that is a personal demon of mine that I need to just say, okay, I'll do it. Yeah, I think we all come at some point. We all start with this: what do I have to offer, kind of thing.
Right.
And that's kind of where I am. All right. So what I sit here behind this mic and I have you guys tell the story. So what do I have to do? So it's something that I've been considering and I need to get on board with.
Well, just because you just talk to so many of us, you get this awesome funnel to just fill with knowledge and you get to sit through it all. And buddy, I mean, I would love to hear what you have to say about what you've learned from all of us. If you could summarize us all down to 3 or 4 things you learned from each of us, that would be amazing. I'd pay good money to hear that.
The one thing and I don't want to give away too much about it if I don't want to sell it, but anyway, the one thing I did learn is that every time I listen to a story, I go, there's the piece of me that's in that story. And so that's fascinating to me. But tell us where listeners can find you.
So Ben Vernon is my name. So www.benvernon.com is my website that it gives you the opportunity to contact me or my manager and articles. My intention is to put some training videos on there, things I've learned.
Right.
But that's how you reach me is that website. So, and I'm benvernon.com, which is, it's weird to have my own domain name.
Your own domain.
Anyway, but Bennett, yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
Any social media presence?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. I have Ben Vernon Public Speaker, but I don't do a lot on that page. If you just reach out to me, Ben Vernon on Facebook and Instagram. But that's that's me. And you don't have to call me to book a speaking. If you want to call and talk because you need to deal with your PTSD, man, I'm there for you as well. So
Awesome.
reach out via email, but we'll talk on the phone, and I'll listen to anybody's story if they want to share some issues they're going with, or especially if they've been attacked and they want to talk about
Yeah.
that. I can help. So
Well, like I said, I appreciate the time.
that's all I got.
I will let you know. I'll give you a heads up on when this one's coming out. It's going to be probably middle of January, just because I'm on a little break for the holidays
Okay.
right now. And then
Awesome.
I'll do a little social media blitz, and I'll let you know about that as well. So you can see the little clips I put out, and we'll go from there.
Perfect. Awesome, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. That was fun.
All righty, sir. I appreciate it. And if you just hang out for a minute after I hit stop here, that way we can get everything downloaded. All right. Well, we're out.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Things We All Carry. Head over to the website, thethingsweallcarry.com, for show notes, resources, and to sign up for the newsletter. Until next week, take care of yourselves and remember to check in on each other.